Have you ever been right there with a woman close enough to feel the moment and you just froze? You didn't move. You didn't lean in. And then, somewhere between that silence and her checking her phone, the window closed. She pulled back. The energy shifted. And you walked home replaying it over and over thinking, what did I do wrong? Nothing obvious. You were kind. You were present. You were trying. And somehow that still wasn't enough. I'm your host, and this is Dating Unfiltered, where we uncover the real psychology that creates desire. Not the kind sold in pickup lines, but the deep, honest architecture of attraction that most men were never shown. Today, we're talking about something specific. Something physical, psychological, and more powerful than almost any word you could say. We're talking about where you touch her, when you touch her, and why doing it in the right sequence doesn't just feel good, it biologically shifts how she sees you. And I'll warn you now, the final trigger we'll cover is incredibly powerful. It can change everything fast, and almost no one uses it correctly. So stay with me all the way through. But first, let's be honest about what's actually happening when a man feels stuck with a woman. You've been there. Maybe it was last weekend. Maybe it was 6 months ago and you still think about it. You met someone. The conversation was alive. She was laughing. She touched your arm at least once. And somewhere in your mind, you thought, this is it. This is the moment. And then you hesitated. Or you went too fast. Or you said something overly serious and killed the warmth. Or you were so careful not to make her uncomfortable that you made her bored instead. And she left. Not angry, just disinterested. Here's what most men do next. They decide something is wrong with them. They weren't tall enough, funny enough, confident enough, rich enough. They start cataloging their flaws and building a case against themselves. Stop. Right now. That is not what happened. This was never your fault. Nobody taught you this. Not your father, not school, not the culture that told you to just be yourself while simultaneously punishing you for not already knowing the invisible rules. You weren't rejected because of who you are. You were rejected because of a sequencing error. You triggered the wrong emotional response at the wrong moment. That's it. That's the whole problem. And sequencing can be learned. Attraction in a woman isn't a light switch. It's not binary. It doesn't flip from off to on because you said the right sentence or wore the right shirt. It builds. It's layered. It moves through emotional states that need to be activated in a particular order for the whole thing to become magnetic. Most men skip layers. They jump straight to physical interest before emotional investment is there. They try to create intimacy before tension. They offer comfort before desire has been earned. And every time, the whole thing collapses. Not because she didn't like you, but because the emotional chemistry wasn't built in the right sequence. Here's the framework. Evolutionary psychology tells us that women have deep, ancient instincts designed to assess a man's value quickly and accurately. Her subconscious is constantly scanning, not for perfection, but for specific signals. Safety, strength, intelligence, emotional availability, mystery, status. These aren't conscious checklists. They're faster than thought. They run on pattern recognition built over hundreds of thousands of years. And they respond powerfully to specific triggers. When you trigger these in the right order, something changes. You stop being a man who is trying to be attractive. You become a man her nervous system has already decided she wants to be near. That shift from chasing to drawing is what we're building today. There are 7 of these triggers. 7 specific signals that, when expressed naturally and in sequence, Create the kind of attraction that makes a woman not just want to stay in the conversation, but want to leave with you. Let's go through each one. The first is masculine presence. Not your height, not your looks, not your income, your energy. There is a quality that certain men carry that women feel before a single word is spoken. It's the way a man takes up space without apologizing for it. The way he's still, the way his eyes don't dart around looking for approval. Grounded energy, not aggressive, not performative, just settled, rooted. Picture walking into a room and instead of scanning for whether people like you, you simply arrive. You're comfortable, you're unhurried, you hold eye contact not to intimidate, but because you're genuinely interested. That stillness is presence, and it signals something ancient to her subconscious. This man doesn't need external validation to feel whole. Presence is not something you perform. It's something you build by actually living a life you're proud of. But you can access it in the moment by slowing down, breathing lower, responding instead of reacting, letting silence exist without rushing to fill it. Presence is the foundation. Everything else sits on top of it. The second trigger is emotional challenge. This is where most kind-hearted men go wrong. They think that to win her over, they need to agree with everything, compliment everything, and never create friction. What they create instead is an emotional flatline. No tension, no spark. Attraction requires polarity. She needs to feel like she's with someone who has a perspective, who will push back gently, who isn't desperate for her approval. Not because you're playing games, but because you genuinely have an inner world that doesn't revolve around hers. A playful tease, a light disagreement, a moment where you smile and say, "I don't know about that," and hold your ground. These things create a small, healthy tension that wakes up the emotional circuitry of attraction. She starts to think, he's not predictable. He's not just trying to please me. That's interesting. You're not trying to be difficult. You're being someone real enough to have an edge. A man with no friction is furniture. A man with gentle, confident challenge is someone she thinks about later. The third trigger is selective attention. This one goes against everything your instincts tell you to do when you like someone. Your instincts say, give her everything. All your time, all your attention, all your availability. Prove that you're interested. But here's what that actually communicates to her subconscious. I have nothing more important than your approval right now. And scarcity creates value. Not fake scarcity, real scarcity. The kind that comes from having a full life. Passions, friends, goals, a purpose that pulls you forward even when she's in the room. When a woman senses that your attention is genuinely limited, not because you're manipulating her, but because you actually have a life worth living, that attention becomes something she wants to earn. She starts leaning forward instead of pulling back. She starts wondering what you're thinking instead of waiting for you to chase. You don't need to play hard to get. You need to actually be worth getting. That's different. That's real. If this is making sense so far, hit subscribe and join the Gentle Mind community. It helps more men learn what they were never taught. There are thousands of men in there beginning to understand this for the first time, and what they're realizing is changing their relationships, their confidence, and the way women experience them. Don't miss the next one. Hit subscribe now, then come back. The fourth trigger is intentional listening. Most men hear a woman. Very few actually listen to her. And the difference is something she can feel in her entire body. Intentional listening means you remember. You recall the small details she mentioned 20 minutes ago. The name of her childhood dog, the city where she grew up, the thing she said she wanted to try but hasn't yet. You bring it back. Not to impress her, but because you were actually present when she said it. This is emotional seeing. It tells her, without you saying a single word about it, that she is worth paying attention to, that she is specific. Not just a woman in front of you, but this woman, this person, this particular human being. In a world where most men are half present, staring at phones, nodding without hearing, full attention is extraordinary. It's rare. And rare things feel like gifts. She doesn't need you to have all the answers. She needs to feel that you actually see her. When you see someone, really see them, they feel safe enough to open. And openness is where everything begins. The fifth trigger is calibrated vulnerability. This one is subtle, and it requires precision. Vulnerability is powerful. It creates intimacy faster than almost anything else. But most men either avoid it completely, presenting a hard, closed front, or they dump too much too soon and make things heavy before trust is there. Calibrated vulnerability means you share real things, real fears, real stories, real moments of doubt. But you share them from a place of strength, not to seek rescue. There's a difference between I struggled with this and I learned from it, and I need you to help me carry this. One is human. One is a burden. When you say something real about yourself, not for sympathy, not as a performance of sensitivity, but because it's genuinely true and you're comfortable enough to name it, something shifts in her. She sees that you're not a constructed version of a man. You're an actual one. Real men are complex. They've failed. They've doubted themselves. They've been hurt. Acknowledging that doesn't weaken you. It makes you three-dimensional. And three-dimensional men are far more compelling than flawless cardboard. Be real. Be grounded in that realness. Let her see you without hiding. Now we get to the one that's directly connected to what happens physically between two people. The sixth trigger, gradual physical touch. This is not about being aggressive. This is not about grabbing or rushing or forcing a moment. This is about understanding that physical touch, when it is light, respectful, timed correctly, and progressively calibrated, releases oxytocin in both of you. And oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's the same chemical released between a mother and a child, between close friends, between partners who've been together for years. You can begin to build that neurological bridge in a single evening. It starts small. A brief touch on the arm when you're laughing together. A gentle guide at the small of her back when you're moving through a crowd. A moment where your hands are close and you don't pull away immediately. These aren't accidents. They're invitations, offered softly, with the full intention of letting her lean in or step back without pressure. And here is the spot, the one the title of this video points to. The upper arm, just below the shoulder, not the hand. That's too formal. Not the waist. That's too presumptuous too early. The upper arm. It's personal enough to be intentional, accessible enough to be comfortable, and when touched lightly, in a moment of real laughter, real connection, a genuine shared second, it crosses a threshold. It moves from social touch to personal touch. Her nervous system registers it differently. It lands differently. Follow that with eye contact held half a second longer than normal. Not staring, just present. Let that moment breathe. Don't immediately look away or make a joke to diffuse it. Hold it. Let the warmth exist. Done with presence and care, that moment plants something. It makes her aware of you physically in a way she may not have been before. And awareness becomes anticipation. Anticipation becomes desire. She starts to wonder, almost without realizing it, what comes next? You don't need to do more than that to shift the entire energy of an evening. One precise, unhurried, present moment of physical acknowledgement, and the whole conversation changes. Touch communicates what words can't. Use it slowly. Use it with care. Let it mean something. And now, the seventh trigger, the one I warned you about at the beginning, the one almost no man understands or uses correctly. Controlled unpredictability. Here's what you need to understand about the brain. It runs on dopamine. And dopamine doesn't just respond to pleasure. It responds to the anticipation of uncertain reward. This is the same mechanism behind why someone keeps checking their phone, why slot machines are addictive, why the person who sometimes texts back and sometimes doesn't creates a quiet obsession. That's not a trick. That's neurochemistry. And it can be expressed authentically, ethically, and powerfully. Controlled unpredictability means you are not a formula. You don't always respond the same way. Sometimes you are warm and engaged and fully present, and sometimes you pull back slightly. Not because you're punishing her, not because you're playing games, but because you have an inner life that she doesn't have complete access to. You have depth she hasn't explored yet. You are genuinely interesting enough that you cannot be fully predicted. Be the man who sometimes surprises her with thoughtfulness she didn't expect. And sometimes says, I've got somewhere to be. And means it. Be the man who laughs at something she doesn't fully understand yet. Who has a reference, an interest, a world that isn't centered around impressing her. Unpredictability, when it comes from authentic fullness, creates the dopamine loop that makes her think about you when you're not there. It makes her wonder. Wondering becomes wanting. But here's the control part. It has to be real. Manufactured unpredictability is transparent and hollow. She'll feel it immediately and it will feel like manipulation. Authentic unpredictability comes from actually being a full human being. Complex, engaged in your own life, genuinely interested in the world beyond her. You can't fake richness. You have to build it. So build it. Read the book, train the body, start the project, build the friendships, develop the perspective, become genuinely interesting to yourself, and then bring that man, that full, grounded, purposeful, slightly mysterious man into every room you walk into. When those 7 triggers are alive in you, here is what stops being true. You stop needing to find the right line. You stop rehearsing what to say. You stop scanning for signs of her approval. You stop chasing. Because a man who carries presence, who challenges without cruelty, who is selective with his attention, who sees others deeply, who shares himself honestly, who touches with intention, and who remains genuinely unpredictable, that man doesn't chase. He draws. Women don't want a performance. They want an experience. The experience of being near a man who is fully, genuinely alive. A man who makes them feel seen, challenged, safe, and slightly uncertain all at once. That combination, seen and uncertain, is the chemical recipe for deep, real attraction. You don't need to be perfect. You never did. You just needed a map. Now you have one. These aren't tricks. They are real tools, and they work because they're aligned with how human beings actually connect. Biologically, emotionally, psychologically. Use them with respect. Use them with intention. Use them on a woman you genuinely want to know, not just a woman you want to win. Because real attraction built this way leads somewhere worth going. Not just a good night, a real connection. The kind that starts with one unhurried touch on a summer evening and quietly, steadily builds into something neither of you expected. You've always had more to offer than you knew. You were just operating without the right understanding. That changes tonight. Not because you're going to become a different person, but because you finally understand the invisible language that attraction speaks, and now you know how to speak it back. You're not broken. You were just untaught. Now you're not. If you're ready to stop chasing and start becoming the man women genuinely desire, subscribe to Dating Unfiltered now. Turn on notifications because the next one will shift your reality again.